Hey, what's up YouTube? It's time for the flying pencil, the slippery snake, the rocket, and the Atari Ferrari, or as some call it, the Boeing 757. The long, slender, narrow body explains the flying pencil moniker, but I did learn that the state-of-the-art cockpit, for that time period, led to the Atari Ferrari nickname, which is kinda cool. If you're going to use the photoetch fan blades, you need to create your own method to attach them inside the cowling halves. After I bent them in the wrong direction and then rebent them correctly, I used a piece of sprue. You could use anything cylindrical and thin to attach them to the exhaust section. Another tricky part here is that the cones on both the fan intake and the exhaust must be saved and attached to the photoetch. I used a Dremel to separate the cone on the exhaust and then the Xuron nippers to detach the fan blades on the inlet. My tweezers are holding on to the custom designed piece of sprue I used to attach the fan blades. No instructions for how to do this, I just made it up because it made sense. This sprue glue was made by chopping up pieces of sprue and then mixing them into an almost empty bottle of Tamiya extra thin cement. If anyone can scribe a straight line without using a piece of guide tape, please leave a comment below. I'm under the impression that it's impossible. I'm using a micro drill to make holes for the antennas and then test fitting them to make sure they actually fit. I won't attach them until the very end of the build, but you don't want to wait until the end, once everything's nicely painted, to start drilling holes in the fuselage. Another cut I'm making early on is for the wing lights, which will be made from clear epoxy. The hydraulic lines for the landing gear require some bending, which can be accomplished with tweezers and a fingernail of any length. You'll want a reference photo to see how they bend and form around the strut, because this is not included in the instructions. I used Nazca decals for this build. They were great quality, and I've purchased them for my Qantas 737 build, but the tail logo decal was too large. I started by scanning the decal and printed it onto paper and conducted a quote-unquote dry test fit, which is a good idea for any large tail decal. No amount of trimming could make it small enough to fit on the tail though. So I put my wife's Cricut machine to good use. I made a multi-layer mask using GIMP software. It's free to download online. I taught myself how to use it via YouTube and Google, and then used the designs to cut out the masks, which I then used to paint the logo on the tail, and also the engine sides. The cheat line, which is that red stripe that runs around the fuselage, isn't really a cheat line at all. The decal is so translucent that if the red section isn't placed on a white background, then it becomes really noticeable. Also, if the red overlaps itself, it also becomes a really noticeable, darker color. The bottom line, spend the time to mask it off and make sure the border between the white and the teal is as straight and clean as possible. I also had to go back after I'd already completed the engines and paint a white stripe adjacent to the aluminum lip for this very reason. The red did not show up well on top of the teal color. Aside from the oversized tail decal, which I think should have been designed as multiple smaller decals that could have been layered, everything else was excellent and good quality to work with. Don't be afraid to cut them into smaller, workable sections. The final step was attaching the antennas and the pitos and the other probes into those holes that I had pre-drilled. A tiny drop of PVA glue on the end of them helped secure them into place. This was a great kit to begin with, but I thoroughly enjoyed adding some photo etch to it. This was actually my first time doing photo etch on an airliner, but it will not be my last. Hope you enjoyed the video, and I will see you on the next build.